Hi, and welcome to the OT is In, the podcast where we merge the worlds of education and occupational therapy to empower families like yours. I'm Sarah Collins, your host, an occupational therapist and a homeschooling parent. I've experienced occupational therapy by supporting families for over 15 years, but also through seeking out support of my own children, so I'm right here in the trenches with you. Though there is not one way to educate your child, there is a lot to consider when individualizing an education. And the goal of this podcast is to explain some of the why behind what an occupational therapist is thinking so you can apply it to your own family. Especially with my three favorite topics: executive functioning, handwriting, and sensory processing. Each episode will be packed with practical tips, expert interviews, and real-life stories aimed at helping you to create a supportive learning environment for your child. So, grab your headphones and get ready to dive in of the collision of education and occupational therapy. I'm Sarah Collins from Homeschool OT, and I'm thrilled to have you with me on this journey of discovery. I welcome Kim Hazelton, an experienced occupational therapist and homeschool mom, to discuss the expectations that parents should have when seeking occupational therapy for their children. We're going to break down the connection between the sensory system, the autonomic nervous system, and behavior, and the way the body reacts. We answer the questions: how am I going to find someone to help support me, the parent? What should I look for in a therapist? What questions should I ask? And what is my role as the parent in occupational therapy? What can I expect in a collaborative therapy session? Kim's also introducing her books, The Calm Down Child and The Neuro Roots, offering valuable resources for you, the parent. So tune in to learn more about making the most of occupational therapy sessions and supporting children with sensory processing challenges. Hey, so welcome back. Today I have my friend Kim Hazelton here, who is a fellow occupational therapist slash homeschool mom, although your kiddos are graduated, and she is a wealth of wisdom. Kim and I have chatted a few times all the way back from when I was starting as a homeschool mom myself. Gained a lot of wisdom through Kim throughout these years. So Kim, I invited her on here because she runs a fantastic clinic in Central Florida, right? Near Orlando?
Tampa.
And I invited her because in episode 2, I talked a little bit about my background as an OT when I was working in the clinic. The one family that I still think about on the regular, who I said, like, you know what, before you come to me, you need help from somebody else. And what that did, I think, to that family, what that could have done. And in addition, now I'm sharing this story with permission, but there's a family that we know that recently was going to occupational therapy, was seeking out assistance because their homeschool day is oftentimes very difficult. Their son goes into what we would say fight or flight very frequently. He's little, he's 5, and in occupational therapy, there became a battle, over what I would call it a power struggle over getting shoes on. And this little guy, lost his school and was told by this occupational therapist that he cannot participate in therapy. So we want to talk about this a little bit, about kind of hashing it out, about Kim, like what that looks like in a clinic-based setting, like what parents can expect from OTs and what questions should we be asking?
That is a great multifaceted
I know,
question.
so much to do.
Yeah. So let's just start with what parents should be asking, because I actually have been sharing this information in my population, my group as well. What they should be looking for in a therapist is someone who understands the interactions between the autonomic nervous system, particularly the sympathetic nervous system, which regulates our fight, flight, freeze, and sometimes fawn response, and how that impacts the sensory system. And it can also impact the reflexes, because the reflexes are all triggered by sensory input, with the exception of one that we should never see active outside of the womb. That one is triggered by hormones from mom, but all of the rest of them are sensory triggered. So if we imagine as grown-ups, when we are driving in the car, this is the typical example. We're driving in the car and the kids are in the back seat and maybe they're arguing or they're playing and they're being loud. And then the rainstorm comes and it's a downpour. What's one of the first things that we do? Turn down the radio, right?
Yeah.
Tell the kids to be quiet so I can concentrate. So our sensory systems get overloaded when our autonomic nervous system elevates, when we get
Right.
into that heightened level of vigilance, checking the road and making sure we can
Mhm.
see, and are there cars, ahead of us and things like that. So if we consider ourselves functioning as far as our autonomic nervous system, our reflexes, and our sensory system, and we have to regulate
No doubt.
it and modulate it when we have a higher state of the autonomic nervous system, imagine what a 5-year-old can do. And I mean, they typically can't, your neurotypical 5-year-old struggles with that type of
Yeah.
regulation. So if you're already struggling, if you've got a 5-year-old that's already struggling with regulation, and then you put them in a situation where you're giving them a power struggle, and maybe they've already had an entire OT session, they've gotten sensory
They've
input,
worked and worked, right?
worked, and now they're tired, they may be slightly dysregulated as they're leaving, and then there's a power struggle over putting on shoes. That's not a struggle I'm willing to have with that child.
Nope.
I want that child to remember transitioning well from the session
Mhm.
so that they want to come back, and we can work on shoes another time.
Right, right. I mean, shoes of all things. And an important thing, yes, now OTs definitely work on dressing and those ADLs, that type of thing. But to make sure that our parents' goals are matching what
Mhm.
the therapist goals were in that point, because what this family shared was like, no, I don't actually care about putting on my kids' shoes at this
Yeah.
point. So that's another important thing to be saying, or a question to ask. Like, make sure that your goals are the same as what the therapist goals are.
Absolutely. Well, I would say the therapist needs to make sure that their goals are the same as the
Same as
parents' goals.
parents' goals, right.
We
Mhm.
should not have OT goals. I remember when I worked in the school system and they would tell me for IEPs I needed to write OT goals, and I was like, there are no OT goals. It's
Yeah.
the parent goals and the educational goals. That's it.
Yes. I love
So
that. I love that, the way that we're thinking about that. So, if we are, as parents, right, going in to find a clinic, and sometimes we have choice, right? I know a lot of, well, in a big city or places like where I live, there's an abundance of resources, but that's not everywhere. So, when we're thinking about occupational therapists who are going to help to work on this nervous system, right, and to help that to carry over, what would we expect to see, like, in a session?
So again, I want to emphasize that, well, we're working on in the clinic because we're under the medical model there. We're not under
Mhm,
the educational model, so we're not limited to just educational goals, accessing their environment like the IDEA in the school system. In the medical model in the clinic, we can focus much more on what the parents want. And so that is one of the first things that we are asking families when they come into our clinic. Where are your challenges and what do you want for your
mhm.
child? And usually I'll also say, score this. Tell me from a 1 to a 10. You've given me 3 challenges that your child has. Tell me which one's your first priority, your second priority, and your third priority. And we will focus on what the parents find most important because they're the ones that understand how this has to fit in their lives and the lives of their family and the school. And we've said that you and I are both homeschool moms. My kids
Mhm,
are in
right,
their mid-20s. They're married. I was just over at my daughter and son-in-law's house. So I'm not in that world anymore, but I
right.
still consider myself once a homeschooler, it's you just don't get that out of your system.
Nope.
And yeah. And in our clinic, we focus a lot on education as well as the medical model. We have a little bit more freedom because we are cash-based, private pay,
Mhm,
but we do recognize that you can look at more things in the clinic than you can in the school system. So when the parents are coming in, we say, what are your concerns? Where are your
mhm,
struggles? And what's your priority? And then we will start working on those things. But before we even start treatment, when the parents come in, that very first evaluation, we give them 2 books. They're books that I've written, and so
mhm.
they describe what we do, how we do it, and what is expected of them, because we do expect parents to participate as well. And that is so important for therapists to be an educator for the parents and
Yes.
to empower them at home with their kids. Give them techniques that are going to give their child immediate success while you're still working on building those skills in the therapy sessions. So I'm not sure I answered your question because I might have gone a little bit off on a tangent there, but hopefully I
Well, you answered, I mean, based on, I'm an occupational therapist too, so I know like what we're at the heart of the matter here, what we're looking for is it's going to be unique. So you can't just generally say, like, this
right.
is what you should see within a therapy session because the goals are going to be different per kid and per their environment at home. And especially if it's a homeschool, whether we're looking at, there's 2 kids, 3 kids, 5 kids,
Mhm.
27 kids, whether that person's driving the big giant van in the
Yep.
back, right?
Yeah.
And so those priorities are going to shape the way that your treatment looks. So, in essence, if you're seeing, you know, waiting in a waiting room and you are seeing the same kids or a group of kids come out and the therapist has done the same stuff with everybody, that might be a little bit of a red flag right there.
Yes, yes. It is a little bit of a red flag when you see the same activities being done with each child. And
Mhm,
yet activities can address multitudes of areas of need and
mhm,
goals.
mhm.
So we need to recognize that as well. I don't want a family to go into a clinic and see that and think, "Oh, that was the red flag we were told to look out
Right.
for." But ask the therapist if you
Ah,
see
right.
having
These are what
encountered.
these questions are for. Like, ask,
Yes.
hey, what was going on in there? And
Yeah.
wow, how can I carry that over at home?
Yeah.
Because then you're going to get that underlying reason
Right.
why.
Well, and a lot of what I like to do is say, this is what I hope to see with this
Mhm,
activity. This is what
mhm.
I'm working on. And this is what, so I'm trying as much as possible. Again, I'm educating the parent. I'm using this activity for this reason and I'm modifying it this way. And this is how you can carry it over at home. If you see this, do this. If you see this, do this. And so we're,
Mhm.
like you said, it's individualized. There's no better individual education plan, IEP, than homeschooling.
Yes. I'm like, come on, girl, keep talking. I love it. Before we continue, I want to tell you a little bit about the OT is in community. We understand that every child is unique. Your environment is unique, and what you need and want to do during the day is also unique. That's why it's so amazing to be able to individualize education. But we also know that this individualization isn't easy. So our membership offers personalized support through quarterly consultations with me, Sarah Collins, and weekly group office hours, and a private forum. After all, no one understands homeschooling more than other homeschool parents. We share ideas together and we wrestle through tough topics. As a member, you also gain access to our exclusive resource library filled with printables and webinars, and dive into enriching discussions with our monthly book club. So, unlock the tools and support that you need for your homeschooling journey. Visit homeschoolot.com/join-the-membership. Now, back to the show. All right. So, one of the biggest questions that comes along with, the scenario I was talking about at the beginning is when parents are like, but wait, so in that moment when he was getting combative, is that a behavior that I need to squash? Or is that sensory? And how do I distinguish, I guess, is kind of the question there. And what do I do?
Right. So again, I feel like so much of this comes back to the prep. You have to
Mhm.
prep the parents and yourself. You have to know what they want. So when families come in to see us, one of the first things we do is say, "Hey mom, you are off duty in this session. You
Mm,
do not need to do behavior management because I need to see what the
right.
behavior is in response to these activities. So don't tell him to sit down and pay attention because
Hmm.
if he needs to get up and move, I need to see that." But
Hmm.
I always say, "But you have non-negotiables in your home." And
Oh,
so when
yeah.
you do feel like you need to step in, then you can step in. By all means, this is your child. But
Yeah.
know that I'm not expecting you to be the behavior modification regulator for your child during this
Yeah.
session. You're
Yeah.
off duty. You can sit
Hmm.
back, you can enjoy your child. And I usually try to get the families involved in the session
Hmm. Hmm.
as much as possible. We make hugs a part of an obstacle course. And
Ah, that's so great.
yeah, so we'll have the kids, do the obstacle course, and at the end is mom waiting with her arms wide open. Because these parents spend so much time being frustrated and being told
Hmm.
what a challenge their child is, that I really want that tactile, olfactory, oxytocin.
Mm,
Oh, I want that connection
yeah.
they probably struggle to get. So I want the child to have success with a
Mhm.
challenging obstacle course, and at the end, make that connection with mom or dad or grandma or whoever's there
Yeah.
to hear, "Great job. You did
That's
it. I'm
beautiful.
so proud of you," because they
Mhm.
don't hear that as often as either.
That is beautiful. And that's something we could do at home too. I mean,
Absolutely.
obstacle courses,
Yes.
setting them up. There are many times that my boys, when we would be doing spelling or reading or whatever, I would put letters on one side of the room and they would be on their scooters and going to, crawling
Yep.
across, getting them, bringing them over to me. But, sure, they can put them in my hand, but you can also give me a hug and give them
Yep.
to me. And I mean,
Absolutely.
those are really kind of an
Yeah.
easy way, to make sure that we
Right.
are forming that connection in
Yeah.
there. Ooh,
And it doesn't have to be a hug. I love the
yeah.
hugs. In my house, we call it vitamin H, and we used to give liberal doses daily, but it could be a high five,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just connection.
Yeah. Pat on the back, a look in the face, a kind word,
Absolutely.
whatever it is, the
Little
way that
nose to
your
nose
child
wiggle.
wants you to connect with them.
Yes,
So
Eskimo
that's,
kisses,
yes,
something like that.
what a good
Absolutely.
reminder for sure. For sure. So, okay. So let's say that a parent is coming into occupational therapy. They've kind of greeted, you've set up your goals and that type of thing. You're working in that way. What are some things as an occupational therapist that you're asking parents, just so that parents can kind of be prepared?
So we do ask parents to more often than not, we're working on the more challenging things in the session.
Mhm.
And then when we see success, we'll say, "Mom and dad, please carry this home
Okay.
and do it the way you just saw your child be successful." And sometimes if the parents can't be in the session, like you said, you have 27 more kids,
Mhm.
to make it into the session with us. So the parents may have to some sessions. We love when
Mhm.
the parents are in the sessions, but we'll video and send them the
Mhm.
video of their child being successful in the session. And oh my goodness, the kids love that because here's concrete proof that they did something
Yes, that they
successful.
did something.
And mom and dad get to brag on them to everybody. But we will give them easier things to do at home. So we'll do things like brain gym, we'll do rhythmic movement with them,
Mhm.
body mapping, just different strategies, calming techniques that we see that work in the session, and then we'll just send that home for them and we'll say 3 to 5 times this week do this. We're not
Yeah.
overwhelming anybody. At least we're trying not to. Again, if you have 27 kids, that could be overwhelming.
Right. Yeah, that has to kind of
But
fit into your day.
yes, and so then the next thing the first thing one of the first things we're gonna say at the next session is, "How did it go at home? With the things that I asked you to
Yes.
do, how did it go?" Or maybe we're emailing them between sessions if we've got time.
Mhm.
And I need to hear feedback about, "We just couldn't get to it. We had soccer, we had a performance Friday night, and okay, great
Mhm.
for you." And we'll just focus more on that here in the sessions. And so it is this back and forth between the parents,
Collaborate.
us, to find that just right challenge, not just for the
Mhm.
child, but for the family as well.
So, what you're speaking of there is like a dream OT to me. You're talking about this collaboration with parents. You're talking about the kiddo also being involved. So being able to say like talking with their parents and saying what is happening during the week. And so that's really just beautiful of that. It's a team support. And so one of the things I say a lot, is homeschooling is not alone schooling. This is not something that we have to completely do on our own, but seeking out and building our team with people that can help and support, and collaboration is a huge piece of that.
Right.
So, I love that. You did mention one thing, well, two things actually that I wanted to follow up on. Number one, the books that you've written, are they something that people can get?
They can. They're available on Amazon.
Okay.
I wrote them. The first one is called is it okay if I share this?
Yes, please,
Okay,
please
okay.
do, please do.
The first one is called Calm Down Child. I wasn't even prepared to like talk about this. I don't have the book here at my house. That's so funny. It's called Calm Down Child, and it has more than 50 strategies for calming a child. It works on
Yeah,
anybody. I use them on
yeah,
myself. It's things like yoga, proprioception, essential oils,
yeah,
breathing techniques. And so that's available on Amazon. We give that to families because very often that's who's coming to us,
right.
where our ability to help children learn to better regulate. So
Mhm,
that's what they get when they first come in. They get a little goodie bag. It has that book in it. And then so the funny story about that book is I wrote that in 2020 when we
mhm.
closed for, March to like mid-May or June. I don't remember when we opened, but families were reaching out to us left and right saying, "We're all melting down, tell
Yeah,
us what we can do." And we were saying, we gave you the handouts. Isn't it on your refrigerator? And, video, and you watched me, you videoed me doing this with your child. And,
Yeah.
we were all melting down in 2020.
Right.
So
In that moment, though, you can't remember, wait, I have this resource back here
exactly.
somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I said, great, I'm going to put all of our techniques in a PDF and send it to all of our families. Well, this PDF turned into a book. I had no idea we had that many techniques. So
Amazing.
you'll buy it and think it's very rudimentary. There are stick figure drawings in it because that was all I could do in the moment.
We were melting down anyway. It was your
Yes,
strategy to calm.
exactly.
Go draw stick figures.
And there are some images. There's pictures of my two kids hugging, and
Yeah.
I'm recommending vitamin H. So, very, very interesting diagrams in there to
Yeah.
show how to do what I was describing. The other thing that I do in there is for every technique, at the end of it, I say how much, how often, and how long, because not
Mm.
every technique should be done for 20 minutes.
Right. Right.
So there's that guidance in there as well. The second book is called Neuro Roots, and it's a neurodevelopmental approach to therapy with children with sensory processing disorder. It's basically a parent guideline for when they come in and they know this is the path that we are taking with their child. So Neuro Roots works well as an informative
Mhm.
book for parents and caregivers and teachers or
Right.
whatever. There are not techniques in it for treatment. So it's just,
This is the why, the underlying
this
why.
is the path we are going to take in our
Yeah.
therapy. Yes. And something that you mentioned a few minutes ago, I want to go back and just say, I recognize when you were saying this is like the ideal OT, I recognize what we have in my clinic is different than
Mhm. Mhm.
what you can get in most clinics because we are not insurance based. We do not
Yes.
have contracts with the insurance companies. We're able to take a little more time. We're able to be a little more connective with
Mhm.
families.
Mhm.
And that's not a slam on insurance-based clinics. We used
Right.
to have insurance contracts. I canceled them all in 2012. So I just wanted to say, you can have an amazing therapist in an insurance-based
Yes.
clinic.
Mhm.
It doesn't need to be cash-based or private pay clinic, but it does allow us that freedom to be a little more engaged and
Mhm.
involved
Mhm.
because we've got the time. Um,
Yes.
so I think that's what I had to say about my books.
Fantastic. Now, you did also mention one other thing, body mapping, that I know might be a little like, what on earth is that she's talking
Right.
about? Now, is that in your books?
It is not in my books because it is not my technique to share other than in the clinic. I will tell you, I learned it from Maxine Haller, the Haller method, which is an amazing approach to working with children
Mhm.
with challenges.
Mhm.
And so body mapping it's very similar to the Wilbarger brushing protocol, the DPPT
Mhm.
protocol. You are providing tactile and proprioceptive input to a child's body, but you're doing it in certain patterns. So you're repeating some
Mhm.
of the developmental awareness patterns
Mhm.
for a child
Mhm.
developing awareness of their body.
Interesting. Okay, so that might be something else that parents could look up, or that is more that would
They
be
can
done
ask.
with.
I do know that there are videos on YouTube that show how to do it. Just
Okay.
parents are showing, this is what I was taught. So when the
Yeah.
parents are doing it, that's
Right.
okay.
Right, right. All right. Kim, thank you so much for your time and for helping us to kind of imagine, what our expectations can be and should be when we're going in and trying to find a therapist, but also, what we can expect for our kids, as we're growing and learning right alongside of them, that, there's probably going to be some meltdowns, right? But what we need to do is find the people that can help to support us.
Right.
So thank you so much for that. And how and where can people find you?
I'm glad you asked. We are, so my practice is Sense Able Brain, three separate words. So it's senseablebrain.com. You can find us there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We've got some YouTube videos out there now.
Love it. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. I could talk about this for hours.
I know. I actually said that when I was emailing and asking. I'm like, I can talk about it for hours, but people can't listen that long. So
Right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for having me.
thank you. Have a great day.
You too.